include racial and ethnic equity in U.S. higher education, students and faculty. No word on what they do with Asians. Racial and ethnic equity in U.S. higher education. Why women of color are leaving and how to rethink your DE&I strategy. Again, if a giant, all-powerful corporation determines that focusing on equity is positive change, then you can't have equality. Equality or equity? You have to pick one. Equality means equality of opportunity. Equity means ensuring outcomes based on race, based on sex, based on gender, friction, whatever we're considering today. But she does sound, granted, like a lot of fun at parties. Now, her colleague, Monet, spelled with two N's, and I'm getting very near the end of this now, is no less progressive. She is also at the Atlanta office, where she is, quote, helping clients drive mindset and behavior change and build capabilities at scale. Among her highlights, Monet, spelled with two N's, hosted a webinar for the company called Equity, there's that word again, and a path forward for Black employees. Interesting point of topic, given the fact that the average McKinsey and company partner, like Monet, spelled with two N's, earns on average $560,000. Also, a path forward for Black employees, call me traditional or racist here, should be the same as for any employee. Show up on time, do your job well, make the company better, and help your teammates/fellow employees. I don't know why melanin should be the determining factor, but McKinsey and Company does believe that's the case, and they want to ensure that every company follows lockstep because, hey, that's a positive change. Isn't that, Monet, spelled with two N's? So when it comes to advancing the rights of the world's most downtrodden, which changes on any given day, righting the wrongs of white cis men, that category stays the same for all time. These ladies are aces. They're tops. But how would they handle, actual questions? Kind of like a consultant handling an actual ride at an amusement park. Start with the McKinsey spokeswomen are both notably openly lesbian, and that is an accomplishment for which they should be proud, and no one can ever take it away from you. Let's see how they do when asked about doing business with countries that kill lesbians.
How much overlap do you have with McKinsey's ethics or values, given that it partners with, like, the Kingdom of Saudi Arabia? It's highly illegal to be a member of the LGBTQ community there. And if you chose to engage in supporting that community, would you face backlash with your company?
So I think it's a fair question, and I think a lot of us have to figure out the degree to which we feel like we fully align with the place that we work. I think, for me, I believe our firm is really committed to a lot of things that I am also really committed to. I think on the, you conveniently or coincidentally have two members of the LGBTQ plus community as your speakers today. I'll say very candidly, when I actually joined our Atlanta office, there was nobody out in the office. There were no out consultants in our office at the time. There were actually no out consultants at the time in what we called our southern office. So it was Atlanta, Charlotte, Houston, Dallas, and Miami. And it almost was the reason I didn't join the firm, because it seemed kind of concerning to me.
Sure. You mentioned passion for helping that community in your life outside of work. What career impacts might you have if you chose to do that for people living in Saudi Arabia or Dubai?
So we as a firm are really committed to me. So I actually co-lead with a partner colleague of mine from our China office. I co-lead our global LGBTQ plus affinity group. And it's a global group. We have folks in all of our offices. We have set up a system where we have different levels of membership and different sort of degrees of outness, but it's a global community that's sort of consistently growing. We have a number of offices that I've been at the firm 14 years now, are in a dramatically different place today than they were when I joined in terms of the number of out colleagues and how folks engage. But the firm is, supportive of the community, full stop, in all of our global locations and sort of all of our offices, regardless of the broader political context in which those offices exist.
Bullshit. She admitted that she has been with the company for 14 years. Saudi Arabia imprisoned people on McKinsey and Company's advice only 5 years ago. If 14 years ago, her and her friends laid foot in Saudi Arabia, it would be raining butchmen for a week. Now, let's see how these geniuses handle, but lesbians, for which they should be certainly proud, and no one can take that away from them. Let's see how they handle addressing the sins that their company has committed in the name of turning around a quick profit.
I think a lot of the things you said today sound great, and I think we can all agree that eliminating burnout is probably good for most workers. But not to be too hypercritical, but given the firm you represent has played a not so insignificant role in things like the opioid crisis, addiction for teens with vaping and tobacco, as well as the hollowing out of America's middle class, and work with totalitarian regimes in China, Saudi Arabia, places like that. Why should we actually believe that two representatives from McKinsey care about the well-being of the American worker?
I think you'll have to decide for yourself whether or not you want to take what we've shared today as helpful or not. I'm Diana, this is Monet.
I mean, McKinsey says things that are helpful, but the results are not helpful. Not for jobs in Ohio.
I know there's been a lot of press recently. I think we're not in a position to be sort of the experts to comment on everything that's there. Our firm has created an incredible number of jobs through the work that we do. We actually do more growth-oriented work than we do the opposite. And so on the whole, I firmly believe that we're in a better place because of the work that we do.
We called it a bullshit.
Well, it may be comforting to know that they care just as little about their own employees as they do about you.
Talking about like burnout and like maintaining a healthy life-work balance, what would your advice be to the 2,000 workers that are supposed to be terminated by your company as a part of Project Magnolia? Like, what would you give to them as advice?
Yeah, let's stop this. Let's cut this down. Like, they don't represent the whole company. They came and they do a talk.
Oh, we get
Talk about their
that.
talk. Don't talk about what the C-suite has decided to do. They're not the C-suite.
Oh, no, we understand. I understand. Like, I understand fundamentally.
I mean,
But the thing is that,
behavior they talked about shutting down. Yeah.
How?
If anybody else, if this is what you're talking about, this is not what the rest of us came to. No, we did. We came here to talk about the fact that we're burned out and tired, and some of us as managers have staff burned out and tired.
like,
And we wanna
staff
figure
that is
out how
burnt out and tired, but also losing their jobs.
You know, I lived in the tech bubble. I was laid off for every year in a row for 5 years in the tech bubble.
I have been laid off too.
That's not
So it's a terrible
accountable
thing.
for what the billionaires of the United States have decided to do with our country. That's
Well, it's not the billionaires, it is also the representatives and the people here as well.
Now, at first glance, the panelists, as well as the entire crowd, look as though they were floored with offense. Here's the thing, as is often the case, even in their own camp, you right now watching, you're not alone. Not everyone there was displeased with this team's approach.
Thank you for talking about it.
It's hard to hear them preach these things and come and talk down to people when they don't care, like their company.
Yeah, it's you asked the question in a respectful way. People need to hear.
I'm not trying to be a provocateur. I'm just trying to get a real answer because they never give a real answer.
No, you're not, and I don't think people understand the scope of what McKinsey has done to people over the past decades. So, anyway, thanks for saying it.
But those people aren't really hurt, are they? Those people aren't interesting to McKinsey and Company. As a matter of fact, the respondents, by the way, who are lesbian and should be proud and that can never be taken away from them, their approach to handling even the most basic questions is kind of the perfect encapsulation of not only the consultant class, but specifically the elites at McKinsey and Company. They're unbelievably well-versed at screaming platitudes, virtue signaling, but they have no interest in benefiting anyone, anything but their checkbooks or their shareholders. And to be clear, there's nothing wrong with shareholders. Equities have made probably more millionaires than any other device in the history of mankind. The problem is when you create a company that isn't really a company, but exists solely to perform for shareholders at the expense of the consumer, as well as the company that is designed to serve the consumer.